చెప్పండి. ఎస్ మ్యామ్, పోస్ట్ చేశాను, చెప్తున్నాను, వాళ్ళకి మెసేజ్ చేస్తున్నాను.
ఎక్కడన్నా రెండు విషయాలు నేను బయట ఉన్నాను.
Nehru sir, good morning, sir.
హలో నేరు సార్. హలో నేరు సార్ కమలాకర్. గుడ్ మార్నింగ్ సార్. గుడ్ మార్నింగ్ కమలాకర్. నిన్న పోస్ట్ చేసినది సరిపోయిందా మీకు? అది చూడలేదు సార్ నేను. అది నేను మళ్ళీ చెక్ చేసాను. అది మోర్ దాన్ ఎనఫ్ ఫర్ us. అది సరిపో అది కొద్దిగా మనం అటు ఇటు మార్చేసి పెట్టేద్దాం సార్. మీరే ఇంకొక 10 గంటలకు మీటింగ్ పెట్టారు నాక్. అవునా సార్? అవునా, ఓకే ఓకే. అందులో కూడా నేను ఉన్నాను. కాసేపు ఉంటాను ఇక్కడ. సరే సార్, సరే సార్. ఓకే.
కమలాకర్ సార్,
మేడం చెప్పండి.
ఫాదర్ వస్తారా సార్?
ఫాదర్ డౌటే మేడం, మనం నెక్స్ట్ కి వెళ్ళిపోండి.
ఓకే, రిసోర్స్ పర్సన్ జాయిన్ అయ్యారు సార్.
జాయిన్ అయ్యారా? ఓకే ఓకే. గుడ్ మార్నింగ్ సార్. Saugata Sen sir.
Yes, good morning, Kamlakar sir.
Very good morning sir.
Yes.
So, shall we start sir?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Getting ready in the start now.
Yeah, okay okay. అప్పుడు స్టార్ట్ చేస్తారా?
స్టార్ట్ చేస్తాను సార్.
Ah,
A very warm good morning to one and all. I, Aparna Kopolu, lecturer in Computer Science Department, take this opportunity to welcome each one of you present here for the national webinar on behavioral health monitoring using wearable devices. I request our head of the department, Mr. Kamlakar Raju sir, to welcome the gathering.
respected Professor Saugata Sen, BITS Goa, respected faculty members and my dear students. On behalf of the Department of Computer Science, I welcome you all to this national webinar on behavioral health monitoring using wearable devices. The department was established in the year 1988 with a vision of becoming a center of excellence
offering quality education in computer science that inculcate our students to multiple state-of-art programming paradigms and to disseminate knowledge in computing with societal concern. And our mission is afford eminent undergraduate education in a sophisticated environment, preparing students for career as computer professionals in industry, government, and academia. So today it is a current webinar is going on because of health monitoring wearable devices, because you all know that there is one name called Fitbit, which monitors your health, your walking step, how many steps that you've gone through. And you know the Apple Watch has become a renowned device for monitoring your heartbeat. And there are a lot of wearable devices are there. One of the cardio mobile, motive, Garmin, OLED, and Tempo Track, which is a soft pouch which I can put on under arms of the baby, which reads the temperature of the baby. So such type of devices are there, and it is an open research form till the human life exists. A lot of devices will come for health monitor so that the people can activate and aware of certain things without any stress. So with these few words, I welcome you all to this webinar, which is on the current trend in the market because
of the pandemic. You all know one of the major devices that we are using, that is oximeter. From the last 1 year, most of world is using, which used to find the saturation levels of the oxygen and also pulse. Such devices need to come to assess us, our body monitoring. So I once again welcome you all to this webinar on behavioral health monitoring using wearable devices. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. It's our privilege to have our chief guest, Professor Saugata Sen, my colleague Mr. GVS Narasimha, lecturer of Computer Science Department, will give a brief introduction about today's chief guest. Narasimham sir.
Good morning, respected seniors, colleagues, and dear students. Good morning all.
I find immense pleasure in introducing our guest, Professor Saugata Sen, Assistant Professor at BITS Pilani KK Birla Goa campus. He is interested in exploring techniques in mobile computing, wearable technologies, and IoT to improve individuals' lifestyle, skilled in applying various data analytics and machine learning techniques. Prior joining BITS Pilani, Professor Saugata Sen completed 2 postdocs, one at Northwestern University, USA, and other at Dartmouth College, USA. He obtained PhD in 2017 from the School of Information System at Singapore Management University. He has over 6 years of pre-PhD industry experience. We heartfully welcome you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, everyone, for coming. And it's a privilege for me to be here and to talk about my research, actually. So, if it's okay with all, shall I start off with my presentation? All right. Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am.
So my screen is visible, right? And I am audible as well.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
All right, perfect. Thank you once again for having me here. So as Narasimha sir introduced, as well as Annapurna introduced,
I am an assistant professor at BITS Pilani Goa campus. My research work is a lot on wearable devices, and I'll talk a little more about it in subsequent slides. But today's talk will focus mainly on behavior monitoring using wearable devices. So basically, what does that mean? That like you all understand, right? Behaviors can be in various ways. It can be habits that we show, or every activity that we do. So that is what I'll be focusing on, and I'll be talking about how we can use wearable devices to do this monitoring. All right. So to start off, I'm just giving you a broad picture about the research work that I do. My research work is at an intersection of computer science, electronics, as well as medical, in behavioral health. So it's somewhere in preventive medicine. That is where my research lies. I do a lot of work on sensing. So sensing for various kinds of activities and behavior using various types of devices. So over the years, I've built a lot of sensing devices that can sense things like eating. So detecting eating activity is one of the things I have been working regularly. But other than that, I have also been working on monitoring other types of personal health, like when a person is stressed, or can we collect heart rate data to get various other kinds of behaviors. So that is one direction. I also look at sensing for retail. So basically how a shopper is shopping in a store, that is what I look at. But today's talk, I'll focus specifically on sensing for personal health in terms of eating detection. And I will be talking about my work on using a smartwatch for detecting the eating activity. In addition to that, I do a lot of security and privacy related work. So basically, again, when you have all these wearable devices, there is a lot of security threat that comes in. So think about your phone, right? If it's just lying out there, someone can just pick up your phone and type things, right? Sending messages on your behalf. So how does a phone authenticate you? That is one line of research that I've pursued in the past. The other thing that I often look at, and this is a very recent paper that we had published, is about understanding how your Bluetooth pattern can help in identifying whether you're a genuine device or not. But for today's talk, I'll talk about another device that we have built. So this is a ring that we have developed. So it's like your common ring that you wear on your finger, and how we can use that to share a secret that can be used to encrypt any kind of communication that happens with your personal devices. All right. So today's talk, I'll be focusing on answering this question. First of all, can your mobile and wearable devices help in understanding your habits and behaviors? And second is, while it is doing this, can it ensure that your privacy is being enhanced, if not preserved completely? Right? As you understand, like I focus a lot on health monitoring, right? So that is what I have been focusing on. So why is it important, or why is it interesting? So one thing that we understand, we should understand, is our habits and behaviors are closely related to our health, right? Habits such as overeating, smoking, or performing low physical activities leads to various kinds of health risk conditions, right, such as high cholesterol, high blood sugar, obesity, and these in turn lead to various types of diseases. So, I was looking at statistics yesterday itself, and I see that these are like the diseases that I'm mentioning out here are some of the highest death causing diseases in India. Okay, and all of you are aware of these kind of diseases. So these in general are known as chronic diseases. Chronic diseases are basically diseases that last for 1 year or longer. Okay, so these are various types of chronic diseases, and surprisingly, a lot of it is actually preventable, but we still have it, right? We have it because we are still indulging in a lot of our health risk behaviors, right? What I was talking about, such as smoking or even eating unhealthy food. Now, the way we can correct all this is by measuring all our habits and behaviors. So till now, we don't actually understand how do we measure our habits, right? When you're talking about smoking, you say how many cigarettes the person smoked, but can you get the fine grained details, like how many puffs did the person take during the smoking? How many what was the frequency of smoking inter-puff interval? So basically that will show how your lungs were when a certain smoking event happened. So we have to get to these finer measurement things, and only once we can get to these fine-grained measurements, we can work towards preventing them, right? So now the question is, how do you measure all these activities and behaviors, right? So the traditional approach for measuring all this has been through human observation. So you have cameras installed across, say, buildings or across in your house, right? And you can capture videos of a person's habit. And this is usually common in elder care monitoring. It's gradually becoming a little more common even in regular households. But this is one of the approaches that can be taken. The other thing which is often done is through self-reports, right? People write down whatever they are eating, or whatever whatever they are doing during the day, any of the physical activities. Like if you just took a spoonful, you can say that I just ate a spoonful of rice, or X, Y, and Z. All right. The other thing is observation. So this is much more common in animal research, where researchers go and walk behind certain kinds of animals, especially chimps or apes, and observe everything that they are doing. And so that same technique has been applied by researchers for human monitoring as well. But again, one problem you see with all these things is it's painful. Think about it, like day in and day out, if you have to write down every activity that you're doing, how painful that will be. Or even if you have to actually understand, I have to look at videos and make a note, that is labor consuming, right? And it's time consuming in different ways, and it's not really a scalable solution. So tomorrow, if I have to monitor a new activity, it's just not possible to do that, right? So with the availability of these mobile and wearable devices, it's gradually becoming possible to actually get away from this painfulness of these self-monitoring, and rather resort to some of these automated approaches for detecting human activities and behaviors. So again, and all of you must be familiar with these devices, at least the phone has been here for years now, and we all know that it's rich with sensors. We have the smartwatches, as Sir mentioned, we have the Fitbits as well. And these devices are gaining popularity, and they have been improving over the years. And finally, you have devices like smart glasses, or what I'll be talking about, smart rings. They have started coming into the market again after a few years, and that has been because of a lot of technology changes that have occurred. So Google Glass, when it had come out initially, had some issues, but over the years there have been improvements and changes in the hardware, at least, and even some work on privacy, which I'll again talk a little about, to enable these devices to come back into the market again. So again, like Microsoft is coming with the HoloLens, that is the example that I'm showing out here. But yeah, there are various other smart glasses that are also coming. And the reason why these things are so interesting or so useful is because they can allow you to measure your activities and behaviors passively. Okay, so why is that possible? First of all, these devices are unobtrusive. Okay, they're unobtrusive because you don't actually have to interact with the devices. They don't trouble you to collect certain kind of data from you. It can do this collection at any time by its own self. And it is possible because these devices have sensing capabilities, right? You all know that your phones are embedded with a lot of sensors, and these sensors ensure that they can measure various kinds of things. So, for example, think about the step counter that you have on your phone or your smartwatch if you have one. So, in those devices, it is common that as soon as you take a step, the smartwatch knows or the smartphone knows that you have taken a step, and it can do the measurement, and that is because it has sensing capabilities. And this sensing can be done in real time, right? So you don't actually have to wait for a lot of processing to happen before you know that a person has taken a step. So that makes it beautiful, right? So if as soon as you take a step, you see that the step counter shows an increment in the number of steps that you have taken. Now, with the possibility of measuring steps in real time, the good thing that comes in is you can provide interventions in real time. So basically, think about it like if your step counter, like right now, that technique is still in research phase, but because there's a lot of human-computer interaction involvement in that. But again, think about it, right? Now you're sitting down and you're listening to the lecture, right? At some point, you might be sitting there for a couple of hours, and then your watch decides that, oh, you have been sitting for a couple of hours. Why don't you go and take a walk? It sends you an intervention just in time when certain event takes place. Or say if you're eating fries late at night, the watch can tell you, stop eating the fries now. So all these things become possible because just-in-time interventions can be provided. Now, these interventions can be personalized. So maybe you are required to take X number of steps, while I'm required to take Y number of steps during the day. So you can personalize all these devices so that they take the appropriate number of steps, okay? The other interesting thing with all these devices is that they allow custom deployment. So say today you have your step monitor on your watch, on your phone, right? Tomorrow, if you want to track, say, something else, it can be your physical activity, right? Or it can even be eating detection. It can be monitoring water intake. So any app that you can think about, you can go and deploy it on your mobile and wearable devices. So it becomes quite easy, right? And also it is cost effective. You don't have to buy a new device every time you want to monitor a new activity and behavior, right? You can use your watch, you can just deploy everything. It becomes cost effective even from a clinician's point of view. So right now, when we go to a doctor, the doctor only has a snapshot of our health, right? They just know what is like the time when you're sitting at the doctor's clinic. That is the only reading that they have, that your temperature at this time is so and so, your blood pressure is so and so. They don't have a continuous detail. So it might just be that that snapshot does not cover your entire history, right? At that moment, you might be feeling well, but previously you're not. So the doctor actually gets to know a lot of your historical information. So that becomes cost effective for the doctor because they don't have to go and ask you, were you feeling tired at a particular time? Were you like X, Y, Z? There's so many possibilities that the doctor can ask, right, to understand what was the problem. But in this case, with all these devices that are monitoring in real time, the doctor can just look at your data and say like, oh, okay, these are the problems, and you can take these kind of medications, or you can take these prevention approaches, or like there's nothing wrong, like everything is normal, right? Like, so it becomes cost effective from the doctor's point of view, even from the patient from the patient's point of view. At certain times, you don't actually even have to visit the doctor. If you can upload your data, the doctor can sit in his or her clinic and see your data, and you don't have to, you just save on your time for traveling. So like these are like all the wow things about all these mobile and wearable devices. So it looks like all green and nice, right? But again, like everything has its own challenges. So there are lots of challenges that we have to solve for these mobile and wearable devices before they actually get into real world deployment, into things that can be cost effective, into things that can measure passively, unobtrusively, and provide real time interventions. So there are a lot of things. I'll just cover some of the things that I usually focus on in my research, but yeah, you could the possibilities of thinking are countless. Okay, one of the important things is battery life. So with your wearable and mobile devices, what you are interested in is basically communicating, right? You want your phone, because you want to talk to your friends, you want to send a WhatsApp message, you want to make a phone call. You'll hate it, right? If your devices die off every 2 hours and you have to go and charge. Right, with when you're sensing data from your phones, you actually consume a lot of battery. Different sensors have different batteries. So if you remember at sometime in the past, we would switch off our Bluetooth because it would consume a lot of battery. So, and which is gradually becoming less now. Or we knew that if we turned on our GPS, our battery would die fast. So how do you ensure that this sensing that is happening does not drain off your battery? So that becomes a huge challenge, and one of the things that I majorly focus on. How do you write applications that are respectful of the battery in your phone and they don't kill off your phone quite quickly? Okay. The second thing is size. So right now you're thinking about your smartphones, smartwatches. They are quite reasonable size, but I'll soon show you some things that we have built and some things various other researchers built. These lab prototypes are usually huge and bulky. Okay, so you won't want to put a box on your wrist, right? Like that would be like, it doesn't make sense to a large extent that having a huge device. So we have to ensure that as we are building these new wearable devices, their size is of usable characteristics, right? It shouldn't be too big. It should become, or it should be too. It should not become too small. Also, in some cases, that it doesn't become usable. So think about it. If you're building something that is like a pen, okay, that you use for writing, but if it is too small, then like it's not usable anymore. So we have to be very careful about how we choose or build devices that are respectful about the size. Okay, the other thing is the computational capabilities. So when you're thinking about mobile and wearable devices nowadays, these have actually mobile devices, to be more precise, have good computation capabilities. They have your processors similar to what you had a couple of years ago on your PCs, or sometimes like even better than what you have in your PCs, right? That's good, but with a lot of the edge devices, that is beyond these mobile and wearable devices. So something like, say, a heart rate monitor or any other kind of embedded device that runs on a microcontroller. So those have very limited resource. They have very limited computation capabilities. You have to ensure that whatever activity monitoring technique that you're applying to these devices should be like these are basically machine learning techniques that you're running on these devices. They should run on those devices as well. The other very important thing that I usually work towards is privacy. So we are generating tons of data. Okay, tons is it's not the right term to use out here, but we are generating huge amounts of data. The volume that we have generated till now has been huge, and over the years, as we start using more devices, we will produce even more data. There are these companies that thrive on this data. They just love this data to build their own custom understanding of person, and based on that, a lot of privacy concerns starts getting in. So just think about it. Like, say if your insurance company start looking at your wearable data to give you an insurance policy, that will become dangerous, right? Or say if you're insurance in terms of health insurance for car insurance, bike insurance, it just becomes there's so many possibilities that come in, right? Or even if there's a bad person who is trying to take your data, so so that they can manipulate it so that you start paying more for your insurance, or you end up going to the doctor for no reason whatsoever. So that is where a lot of privacy concern comes in. Okay, so I work towards ensuring a lot of these privacy things, and I will be focusing a little more on that. So these are all system related challenges. Other than that, there are a lot of other challenges that have to be addressed, things like data labeling. So we are producing this huge volume of data. Who will sit and label all this data? That becomes a big challenge now that we have to address. The next thing is the data modeling and validation. So basically right now we have all the sensor data. Now we'll build models out of these. These models might run on certain devices, might not run on certain devices. Again, like this relates quite closely with the computational capabilities. So how do you ensure that that you are able to model these build models basically that can run on these devices easily, okay? And how do you validate this in the future? And one of the important things that I look at is adaptability. So today, say if you have a smartphone, okay, and it knows how you're taking your steps, or it knows how you do activity A, B, and C, okay. Tomorrow, if you buy another smartphone, do you go back and train that other smartphone again, saying that this is how you do? So how do you adapt models from one device to another? And again, think about it. It's not just that you pick up a model from one device and put it on another device. Each of these devices have different capabilities. Their sensors will be different. Their computational capabilities will be different. The battery life will be different. So while you're adapting, there are lots of fine-grained things that you have to think about before you can actually get ahead with the adaptation. Okay. So that is where I focus on. So like again, just to give you a broad overview about sensors that exist on your phone, right? Like again, I'm sure that this is not an exhaustive list. There are phones that have other sensors, but again, like these are some of the sensors that exist in your phone, and most of you are aware of them. So you see, like we have huge capabilities. Each of the sensor is so rich in providing so many different types of understanding that we have a huge resource for ourselves. Okay, one of the sensors that I love to work with is called the inertial sensor. Now I'll talk a little more in detail about the inertial sensor before we jump to the work that I do. Okay, so the inertial sensor, or the IMU in the phone, basically consists of either one or more of these three sensors. Usually it's accelerometer and gyroscope. Sometimes there is a magnetometer as well. Okay, so these sensors are basically electromechanical signals. That is, they convert mechanical force into electrical signal. So again, I'll talk a little more about each of these sensors. So your accelerometer, all of you are aware, right, what an accelerometer is. So say if you're traveling in a car, you're accelerating. The accelerometer should be able to detect that this is the acceleration that is being exerted. So the accelerometers are there on your phones. It exists in other kinds of devices as well. Cars is the other example that I can think about right now. There are various other things. So these accelerometer, it's not just the force of movement, it's also the force of gravity that can be measured by the accelerometer. Okay, so that is why when you're watching your phone, say in landscape mode, and suddenly you flip it to the portrait mode, your phone is able to change the orientation, right? It's all thanks to the sensor, the accelerometer. Next is the gyroscope. The gyroscope, basically the way it works is it understands the rotation of the device on its own axis. So basically think about your phone. If you're rotating your phone about itself, right, you're just turning it around. That is what the gyroscope will detect. And it will be able to tell you how much rotation was exerted. Okay, I just realized I didn't turn on my camera. So I'll just do that so that you all can see me. Otherwise it becomes very boring. All right, so that's the gyroscope, okay? The gyroscope basically sees how you're rotating the device across its axis. Then comes the magnetometer, right? So the magnetometer basically is a compass. So this is what you all are aware of, right? Like where it basically identifies where is the north pole of the Earth, right? And it will point in that direction. So these three sensors together actually give you a very powerful sensing capability. So think about it, like when you're including all these three things, it can help you in various ways. It can help you understand like in which direction you're traveling, if you're spinning in that direction, and if like these two are with respect to the device's body. But also the magnetometer added to this tells you with respect to the Earth, in which direction you're traveling, and whether you are rotating about your axis. So this sensor is a very powerful sensor from various new technology point of view. So think about your drones, think about your aircrafts. Your aircrafts are already loaded with very sensitive inertial sensors, okay? But your drones and all are becoming the new age devices that actually use these devices for fine-grained monitoring. So like drones can help in delivering products at a centimeter level. So that is why that is possible thanks to this sensor, okay? And a lot of other capabilities added to this, of course. But this becomes the main sensor. So let's just look at the accelerometer, and I'll just talk briefly about how it works, okay? So again, like all of you are familiar with the Newton's laws. The second law of motion basically says that for a constant mass, force is equal to mass time acceleration, right? F equal to ma. We have been reading this right from high school or sometime later, right? So this is a very important formula, okay? And it's important because for acceleration, you can easily get it from this formula, right? So if you just flip this formula upside down, you'll get your acceleration is equal to force by mass. Now the mass is constant. What you're left with is only the force, right? So basically, acceleration becomes a function of the force applied, and that leads us to Newton's first law, right? Newton's first law states that a body will remain in its state of rest or motion unless an external force is applied to it, right? So that external force when you apply, so if a body is still, you just put a force, right? You push it, it'll fly off, right? So what happens in that? So what happens in that is basically you just push this object that is there, and there was certain displacement, right? So that displacement also comes in. So if you like, again, I'm not getting into the maths details about this, but at the end of the day, what you realize is acceleration becomes a function of distance, right? When you apply that force, there was a change in distance, and that distance, if you can measure, you can again like indirectly measure the acceleration. So if we can measure distance, we can measure the acceleration. So how do we do that now? Let's look at this very simple example. Okay, so if there is a box, you're applying force to it, the box will move, right? So there is this displacement that I was just talking about. So if you can measure this, you know what the acceleration that was exerted on this. So now how do you measure distance? So there are various techniques, okay? There is piezoelectric technique. So this works in the opposite direction. So when you apply force in that is contracting the object, there are certain electrical charges that get discharged, which helps you in understanding how much force is applied. There are other techniques also, but what I will focus on is the capacitive technique. And this is used in your phones, okay? And that is why I love to talk about this. So the way the capacitive technique works is based on this capacitance formula that you all would have seen, right in your high school as well as during your engineering. So your capacitance is equal to the epsilon naught area by T. So, and this is true for parallel plate capacitors. So if you know the area of the parallel plates, and you know epsilon naught is a constant, so your capacitance is indirectly proportional to the distance between the plates, right? So now if you can measure the distance between the plates, you know what is the capacitance, and it's easy to measure the capacitance using certain techniques, right? So we can get to that at again, like I'm not getting into all those details, but how do you measure the capacitance in this case? So say if you had a fixed plate, okay, and if you have another plate that is attached to the body, when a force is applied to this, and let's just assume for a second that there is a spring attached, okay, I just lost my mouse, give me a minute. All right, I found it. So if there is a spring attached to it, what will happen in this case is this body will exert certain pressure on that spring, and then it will hold its place, and then it will come back when you remove the force. So you can basically measure this distance, and based on that, you can say that how much is the acceleration of the body actually. Like if you just do the reverse calculation, the distance will help you calculate the acceleration, right? So that is what is basically used on your force. This is this very basic idea that's used. It's there are these sensors called the MEMS, or the micro electromechanical systems, and they allow you to do it. And this is how it actually looks inside your phone. So this is a highly zoomed in image of the accelerometer that exists inside your phone. So you see that this is the moving mass. If you You can see my pointer out here. This is the moving mass. These are the fixed masses, okay? And all of them have teeth like this. So say if this is the fixed mass and it has its teeth, and this is the moving mass. So when, and here there is a spring. So when this device is moving, the distance between these plates will change. And based on that, you can measure and understand how much acceleration is being applied, okay? So well and good, right? Like this is what your accelerometer does. So what does the accelerometer measure, right? So there are lots of things that it measures, okay? And I'll just talk briefly about some of the things and focus more on the things that I am interested in. First of all is building vibration. So this is something that has been of interest for a lot of years, okay? So you place especially in earthquake-prone zones, where you place accelerometers in your building to understand how the vibration patterns are. And people have done various kinds of things with this. So this basically allows you to understand vibrations, okay? Vibrations can be because of people movement, it can be because of earthquakes, it can be because of various other things. So again, like if you put it on a bridge, you will be able to see the vibration pattern of the bridge. And so that is one important thing. The second thing is physical activities, and this is something that I have looked at quite closely. Basically, when you're doing certain activities, there is a force applied in a certain direction, and if you can measure that and you build your machine learning techniques, you can identify the physical activities that the person is doing. Okay, so think about it. When you're sitting, the only force that is being applied to you right now is the force because of gravity. But if you start walking or running, you will have force exerted in a different direction. And again, this is from basic physics, so you understand how that all works, right? The other interesting thing is fall detection. So this is a much more illustrative thing that I'm trying to show out here with this picture. But in general, fall detection is a very important problem, especially for elderly monitoring. So right now, with a lot of the population, we are improving our healthcare, and a lot of our population is elderly, right? So and many of them stay alone at home. So if you can fix accelerometers to the body of elderly, and you can actually detect if everything is good at home. So that becomes an important problem, and that is something that I have been working with some of the elderly rehabilitation centers in Singapore. So that becomes a very important problem for us to solve. Things that I work on much more closely are in shopping detection. So basically, if I've done things like attaching the accelerometer to the wrist of a person and seeing what items they are picking, how they are picking, where they are picking from. So that is one direction. Things I'll be talking about is eating detection. So think about eating. Like when you're eating, right, your hand is usually stable, and then suddenly there is that movement up to your mouth and the hand comes back again. So if you can detect that accelerometer change, so you usually get very beautiful patterns, okay, the accelerometer in certain axes. So if you can measure that, then you know that the person is eating. The other thing I'll talk about is secret sharing. So this is a very different type of an application of accelerometer that relies a lot on the vibration detection that I was talking about in building vibration. So if you can detect that a vibration sensor, a vibration is being generated by any body, can you have devices that can capture that vibration and use it to understand certain kinds of characteristics? So in my case, I was talking about secret sharing, which I'll get to next. Okay, so these are like a lot of the good things of the accelerometer, right? So now the next question is it just the accelerometer that can do all these things? Well, I showed you a huge picture of the phone and a lot of sensors, right? There are lots of sensors in that, and each of them have different capabilities. And over the years, I've looked at different types of sensors for doing this. But right now, I'm just focusing on the accelerometer to do this. But this is a nice image to show how different sensors can do different things, right? So if you have, say, a microphone, you can detect whether a person is eating based on the sound that is generated. If you have an accelerometer on the wrist, it can detect whether the person is putting food into the mouth. If you have a proximity sensor, you can see if the jaw is moving when a person is eating. So all these things together can do various kinds of things, right? It all depends on a lot of the factors that I was talking about previously, as well as which sensor is advantageous to you in a certain location, right? So an accelerometer on the wrist is an amazing thing to detect your wrist hand movement, right? But it's not a good sensor to if it is on the phone, right? Like your phone, if you have an accelerometer on the phone, it doesn't know whether you're eating or not. So yeah, it doesn't really help in that case. So you have to choose your sensors wisely, and that becomes important. But every sensor has its own capabilities. All right, so let me start off talking about Annapurna. Okay, Annapurna is basically an eating detection work that we have worked on for a long time. So I started working on this, I think, almost 8 years ago, and like we have a very stable version of it right now. But definitely there are lots of other things to do with this. So Annapurna basically is a smartwatch-based eating detection system. It can detect when you're putting food into the mouth. It can detect what you're putting food into the mouth. What you're putting into the mouth. Okay, so the basic objective of Annapurna when we started working on this was to detect when a person is eating and what a person is eating. And then we wanted to show a personalized portal to this person saying that you ate items X, Y, Z at times X, Y, and Z. Okay, and that was the ultimate goal of Annapurna. Okay, and to do this, what were we improving? So existing techniques, at least then, even now, it's true even now, are food diaries. Okay, you basically write down all the food items that you consume throughout the day. But again, that has a lot of problems. You have the problem of missing entries. Like people don't remember to write down all the items that they consume throughout the day. There is a lot of recall bias. Recall bias basically means that you forget things that have happened in the past. Okay, so if I ask you right now, what did you eat for breakfast yesterday? You might just forget about the extra whatever you had, okay, and you won't even remember that now because there is a recall bias that every individual has, okay. And then the third thing is about over or under reporting. So there's a huge social stigma associated with eating. So I'm not trying to generalize in this case, but it's a common trend to see that people who are overweight usually underreport their food consumption, and people who are underweight report their food consumption. Okay, so that becomes a challenge, right? Like, how do you trust any of this diet? So tomorrow, if you take this to the doctor, how does the doctor even believe that whatever you have made entries are correct or not? So that is where we started working on Annapurna. Okay, so again, like the basic idea is that when you're eating, you have this repetitive hand-to-mouth gestures. If you can detect that, you can identify when a person is eating. So as I was saying all this while, that your accelerometer and your gyroscope. I didn't describe the details about the gyroscope, but just take the assumption that it works on a very similar kind of line, like not really in technique, but whatever it is doing, whatever the accelerometer is doing, the gyroscope works on similar lines, but it provides additional details in terms of rotation of the hand and stuff. Okay, so with the accelerometer on your smartwatches, you can detect when a person is eating. So basically you see that this gesture is happening, you know, okay, yeah, the person is eating now. And if you have a camera on the smartwatch, you can actually capture images and identify what the person is eating. So it's good and beautiful, right? So again, like I'll just give you a high-level intuition about the work that we ended up doing, and then I'm going to talk about the details. So if you have a camera at this point, if you can see my wrist out here, if you have a camera at this point, when you're putting food into your mouth, your camera will be pointing towards your food plate. If you can take the image at that point, you can actually have a detail about what the person is eating. So with this heuristic or with this intuition, we went and built Annapurna. Okay, so this is the processing pipeline for Annapurna. So the first thing is we'll have the accelerometer on throughout the day to detect when a person is eating. When we detect that the person is eating, that is when we'll turn on the camera. Again, like judiciously in this case, to ensure that we're capturing images of only the food plate. And then we have image processing techniques that we applied, which I'll talk a little in detail out later to show that how do we remove certain images. And then we have this ranking algorithm that ensures that we identify which are the best food images. And that is what we show to person in the form of a food diary, okay? Now, the big problem with inertial-based sensing is, first of all, your eating looks very similar to other kinds of activities, right? So when a person is smoking, the hand-to-mouth gesture again happens in a similar way. When a person is drinking, say, hot tea, okay, they will put the tea in the mouth and wait till they finish drinking and then bring the hand back. So all the patterns that you see in these activities are very similar to that of eating. So we had to differentiate that, and we observed that we could differentiate that, okay? The other thing that we identified was people's habits vary. Okay, so when a person eats with spoon, It's very different from how a person eats with a fork, how the person eats with a chopstick, how the person eats with a hand. So out here, I'm just showing two patterns of how the accelerometer reading looks when a person is eating with a spoon versus chopstick. But with the other modalities, there is also a lot of difference. The other thing is for different users for the same modality, there is a lot of difference in which by which they actually eat. Okay, so today if you're eating like the way you eat with your spoon might not be the same as the way I eat with my spoon. So there is a lot of diversity. Also, there's interesting diversity between different meals, right? Like the way you eat when you're alone is very different from when you're eating with your friends or when you're eating while watching TV. So we had to accommodate all these diversities while we were building Annapurna. So the way we finally ended up building was we were using the inertial sensor to identify when the person is eating, and then we captured images. Okay, but we had a big filtering step in the image part where we said that if there is no image of food captured while the person is eating, the person was not eating. And based on that, we could remove a lot of the false positives that got generated. So this is a little description about the study. So basically, we had a study with 21 participants. They ate a lot of different meals, and this was all captured in either a restaurant or in a food court where we were video recording them to understand how their behavior was. And then we built a standard machine learning technique, right? We trained the data and then we tested. So we did tenfold cross-validation. And again, I believe a lot of you are aware of it. If you're not, that's okay. Like that's a different thing to talk about. I won't touch into that right now, but we did a tenfold cross-validation. And what we identified were certain kinds of classifiers perform much better than others. So in our case, tree-based classifiers perform better than your SVM kind of a classifier. Okay, so we had to now put this classifier into the smartwatch, right? So that we could detect eating in real time. So what we decided was we'll put a decision tree classifier into the smartwatch so that it can detect the eating. And the reason for choosing this is a very lightweight classifier as compared to any of the others. Like SVM's performance was slower, so we did not go with SVM. Random forest is basically an ensemble of multiple decision trees. So that becomes heavier. And we're talking about smartwatches about 7 to 8 years ago. They hardly had a lot of computational capabilities. So we chose the lightest one. We pruned our decision tree so that it still performed okay. And then we went ahead with the study. So the next thing is the image capturing. So how do you capture images? So what we found was that there is a huge trade-off between energy consumption versus the number of frames you get in a second. Okay, so we tried out 3 different modes. Burst mode is basically when you take a single image and then you take another image. So it becomes various snapshots. Video, as you all know, is continuous sequence of images. We tried these two, but what we found was there is another option called the preview mode, which actually works good for us because it had a frame rate as high as that of videos, and it had power consumption that was much more lower than videos. And the reason for this is because these were low quality images as compared to what you would get in a video. And I show the difference in the picture below when we did it for 2 different studies. But in our case, when we were doing the image processing, the preview mode actually worked out quite well for us. The next thing we wanted to test out is what is a good position to capture the images, right? So we tried out various positions. We got a lot of smartwatches and we were trying out various positions. And what we finally identified was if you had your camera at this position, you could capture in most of the cases, we could capture images of the footprint. So that is why we decided to go with our choice of using a Samsung Gear One watch, and we did all our studies. So I'm showing you a preview of what images we captured. And again, this is a slowed down version of when a person was actually eating. So you see that we could actually capture the food plate quite well, right? So now, if you have captured the food plate, that is just one part of the problem solved. The next part is how do you run image processing? So things we did on the images were things like edge detection. So one idea was that if you have food on your plate, you'll have much more edges in that image as compared to when there's no food. So if you see the changes out here, you'll see that there are more edges in these first couple of edges in the first couple of images. Okay, and it gradually increases when the food plate is visible. Next, we wanted to do is a plate detection algorithm. The basic idea in this case was that if a plate is visible, it will have a smooth edge on one side, and there will be a lot of edges on one side of that, and there will be very little edges. So if we can capture that, we can actually know that we have captured a full plate. Then we did foreground detection. So the way foreground detection basically works is like think about your own vision system, right? Like you have stereo vision. So basically that means that you know what is far, what is near. But with a single camera, like if you were to close one eye, you actually lose out on that information of how far an object is. So it becomes a big challenge for us. So in our case, we since it was a single camera, we applied a different approach where we were looking at images that were captured a couple of milliseconds after each other. And based on that, we were identifying whether it's a foreground or background. And then we ran all the images that were finally filtered through a deep learning model to identify whether there was food or not. And then we ranked these images and we showed it to the participants in the form of a food journal. So this was the food journal that we had shown to a particular participant on a particular day, and you can see that we were showing various images. Okay, so we did a user study with 9 participants who wore the watch for 46 days, and they had a total of 81 meals. Okay, what we identified was that we could capture almost 77 of those meals, and actually the inertial sensor falsely identified a lot of extra meals, which we could remove when we did the image processing that we did. So this is a little detail about the images that we captured and the location where we had. So with Annapurna, we showed that it was actually possible to use a smartwatch for eating activity monitoring. Okay, that's all about Annapurna. I'll take questions now if any of you have it. Otherwise, I'll take it at the end if you all are more comfortable with that. All right, let's take it at the end. I think that will be better. So the next question that comes in is now if you have a smartwatch at your home, your evil twin can come and wear that smartwatch and capture images of things that you have not eaten. How does the smartwatch even know that you are the genuine person? You are the one who is eating, right? Like, so if I take your watch and I capture, I wear your watch, okay, and I eat a lot of pizza, it'll say that you have eaten all this pizza. So that's not fair, right? Or that's not good from a doctor's point of view, who doesn't really understand that whether you are the right person or not. So to counter that, we built the system called Vibring. Vibring is basically a smart ring that is worn on the hand, and we are assuming that the person will always wear this ring in his or her hand throughout the day. And using Vibring, we were able to show or identify that we can maintain this continuous authentication between your devices, your smart things, and your personal device. So basically, your phone will know which smart thing you're interacting with. The smart thing will know which phone to talk to, or who is the person to whom I'm talking. Okay, so again, just to give you a brief motivation, we are living in a world where we're surrounded with a lot of IoT devices, right? Again, like these are, like some of these are exaggeration right now, but it's just a few years before everything in this world will have an IP address, and everything in this world will know who is interacting or who is interacting with, what they're interacting with. Okay, so think about the dumbbells in your gym right now, like they are just dumbbells, right? Tomorrow they will have sensors on them so that they know that you are the one who's exercising with this device, and how many repetitions of biceps or curls you did. And your smart keys, your keys will become smart to help you identify where you left them. Okay, so we are moving to a world where we'll have these IoT devices everywhere. Okay, now the question that comes in is, how does your device, your phone, which is a proxy for you, know that with which device you are interacting with? Okay, so now in this case, say there is this smartwatch, okay, that we were using for Annapurna. How does your phone know that you are wearing it, and from the other side, how does the smartwatch know that it is talking to your phone itself and not to the 2 other phones that exist in that environment, right? So we had to ensure this privacy aspect, and that is what we went about building when we built Vibring. So the basic question that we are answering in Vibring is, how does a shared thing quickly, securely, and unobtrusively receive a secret from an individual who is interacting with it? So if you receive a secret, you can use that secret for various things, right? Like if I tell you a password, my password, then you can authenticate me, right? That I am the one who's telling the password correctly. And then maybe we can use that password as an encryption key to encrypt all our communication, right? Using some known techniques. So if you can share that secret, a lot of possibilities happen, which will ensure privacy is maintained. Okay, so that is what we're working towards in Vibring. So the basic idea in Vibring is that, again, like this is a little bit related to computer networks. So you know that your devices right now are capable of Bluetooth communication, right? So your phones have Bluetooth capabilities. That is what you use to communicate with your smartwatch. So your smartwatch could easily communicate and tell the phone that yeah, this is me and I am being used by you. Okay, so or any other thing. But the problem in this case is that your watch really doesn't know that I'm supposed to talk to this phone, right? And like if you are aware of the man-in-the-middle attack, that is a very easy possibility when you have plain text exchange that is happening between these devices, right? So what we went about doing is not staying in this in-band communication channel that is between Bluetooth, but using an out-of-band communication channel that is vibration. Vibration is an out-of-band communication channel that allows your devices to actually communicate, your smart ring, if you have one, to communicate with the device with which you are interacting and exchange a secret. And then this can be used to secure the communication channel between your smartwatch and your phone. And this prevents any someone else in this environment who is nearby to actually know the secret. So one good thing about vibration is it dampens off very fast. Okay, so if there is a lot of exchange between materials, the vibration just decreases. Okay, so based on that, anyone who's nearby can get the vibration signal, but anyone who's far away will not get the vibration signal. So the way we worked about this entire process was that your ring is basically a proxy for you, right? And your phone is also. There is a secure communication channel between your phone and your ring, okay? And you can use that, maybe build that using pairing or any other approach. Now you build a similar technique. So you exchange vibration between your ring and the watch, and this will enable you to actually tell the watch that I am using you right now. And then that vibration can be used to encode any communication that happens between the watch and the phone. Okay, and the things such as who are you and all those other things can be exchanged in this. So these are all the capabilities of each of these devices in this scenario. So I'll just quickly go over the system overview. Okay, so there are three entities in this case. So we'll start off with the ring and the thing. So the ring and the thing, both of them have a pick detection module. Okay, this is similar to what we were talking about when we were doing Annapurna, right? If you have an accelerometer, you can detect when a person is picking up an item, and some of the idea is actually picked up even from our retail-based sensing work. Okay, so once you do that, that is when you send Bluetooth advertisement. The thing sends a Bluetooth advertisement to the ring, and at the same time, the thing increases its accelerometer's sampling rate. The on out here is not the correct thing. It is basically accelerometer sampling rate. It gets increased in this case. The next step that comes in is key generation. So what are keys? Keys are basically secrets, right? And in computer world, we talk about keys in terms of zeros and ones. So this example out here is a 6-bit key example, right? We used a 64-bit key and we transmitted this in the form of vibration. So we generated the keys at the ring, and then we used a motor to vibrate in certain patterns. So when there is a 1, we were turning on the vibration motor, and when there was a 0, we were turning off the vibration motor, and that was being sent. Okay, and I'm not getting into the details about all the techniques we tried, but again, like we used a Manchester encoding approach if you are interested in knowing that. The next thing is very standard sensor processing approach. We applied a pre-processing approach. We rectified the signal, we framed the signal to identify which bits are coming at which position, right? And then we did a lot of feature extraction, and then we extracted the key. So what do we get at the end? So the ring was sending a key K, the thing will receive a key K dash, okay, and this K dash might be same as K, and because of some error, it might not be same as K in some cases, okay. So now how do these two devices ensure that they have the correct keys? So what the ring did in this case was it encrypted the key using K itself, okay, and it transmitted this over the in-band channel, that is Bluetooth, and then the thing decrypted the same thing at its end. So basically, when this happened, if D found that K dash is same as the value of D, after this encryption and decryption function that happens, it knows that it has received the key correctly. Otherwise, it did a forward error correction approach, which again uses a Hamming code in our case. But yeah, you're definitely free to use any of the other approaches for this error correction. Okay. So at the end of the step, what happened was that the ring and the thing shared a secret in the form of a 64-bit key. Now the ring has, remember I was telling you, they have a secure communication channel with your trusted device, that is your phone in this case. So the phone also knows that same key. So now the phone knows a secret, the thing knows a secret. So now they can exchange any other details, like these two devices can say, I am so-and-so, and I'm being used by so-and-so, by just encrypting the data using the keys that got exchanged, okay? So this is what we have actually built, and you can see, right, this is why I was saying that size does matter. So our ring right now is a little more on the bulky side, but eventually we will have a small tiny ring like normal, how your regular rings are, right? Because all these sensors actually consume very little space, but there is a lot of extra electronic components that can get removed so that we could get to the working of this, okay? So again, this is the ring. Again, I'm envisioning a future where all your things have accelerometer and Bluetooth, and so everything in the world will become smart things, okay? And they will have IP addresses so that you can communicate. And this is the evil person with whom we did a lot of our testing. So we did 3 different types of tests. First is how easy is it to decode messages? And what we found was that when we were transmitting at 12.5 bits per second, we had a bit success rate of 97%. So basically that means that if you send 100 bits at 12 bits per second, 97.5 of those bits were received correctly, okay? And for the other cases, we could always use the error correction approach. The other observation was that 88% of the messages were transmitted without any problem. So that was a good news for us. Now, we wanted to understand what parameters affects the performance. So one of the things that we observed was that the way a person holds affects the performance. So in our case, if the person was holding it quite close to the accelerometer, holding the ring, holding the thing, in such a way that the ring and the thing were quite close to each other, then we had good transmission rate, but otherwise it was bad. So it's like challenging because there is a lot of challenges that come in from the HCI point of view, where you have to train participants about different things. But overall, I think it was okay, because in this case, the adversary did not come to know about all the secrets. So this is what we tried out in the third step. Like, does an adversary or someone who's trying to be the middleman out here get the details? So we found that in most cases there was no leakage from our side. So basically, with these 2 projects, we ended up showing that a mobile and wearable device can help in understanding users' habits and behaviors, and at the same time, we can work towards enhancing a user's privacy in different ways. So your like the evil twin that you have at home does not end up collecting data on your behalf. Okay. So again, there are some other projects in the lab which I will skip right now for the interest of time, but I'll just show you this cool demo. Okay, so this is another device that we have built. This is a pentahedron that we had. Each of them had a thermal sensor. So the thermal sensor is very different from the inertial sensor, and as I was saying, like I do a lot of work on different sensing approaches. So what the thermal sensor does is it captures heat signatures. Okay, so you see out here, like when a person is opening the fridge, there are these 5 sensor plates out here, and each of them is being represented by a different side out here. Okay, and this is a pentahedral, so you understand how that works. So when a person is opening the fridge, this part of it can see the fridge, the upper part of it cannot see the fridge. So you see the difference. When a person is cooking, you see some other things. When a person is eating cold yogurt, you see certain characteristics. So all these things get visible with the thermal sensor. So I'll show you this demo if it runs. Yeah, it's running. So when a person is drinking a cold coffee, you see that the hand is visible on the side, and you see that you can actually see where the person is putting the coffee into the mouth. Okay, so yeah, that was other work. I'm just skimming through this. I would have loved to talk about the privacy aspect, but I'll just skip it for the sake of time. Okay. Last slide, I'll just talk about where I see at least the future of all these things going. Okay, one of them is we are gradually moving towards fine-grained activity monitoring, and that is what will become important in the future. How well can you observe different kinds of habits and behaviors at a very fine-grained level? So basically, right now I know that people are eating between this time and this time. Can I get details such as how many spoonfuls did they put in their mouth, or how long did they chew the food? So those are those fine-grained details. Okay, in terms of stress, which I did not talk about out here, can we identify like how the heart rate variability of a person happens during the exercise? So that will actually help doctors to understand a lot of the problems that come in. The next thing that I have been working towards is multi-day battery life, which again, at some point, we are also working towards getting rid of batteries from these devices completely. So we had a very recent publication where we were talking about how do you transfer power over the body. We did it with very small amount of power, and right now we are not at a stage, like no one in the world is at a stage to transmit large amount of power over the body without actually killing the person, right? So we are working towards how we can improve on that so that your devices become battery free and you have multi-day battery life. The third thing is personalized real-time intervention. So again, like this is a HCI problem where you want to ensure that a person is not disturbed while they are doing their activities. So right now, if I tell you, why don't you go and take a walk? Or if someone gives me that notification, I'll say like, I cannot take a walk now because I'm in the middle of a presentation, right? So yeah, so your interventions have to be personalized. And then, like I was telling initially, right, like your devices are capable of monitoring multiple activities, but we still are not in a stage of doing that. And gradually we are moving towards that. And finally, like the most important thing that I feel with the amount of data that we are generating is that we have to be privacy conscious in various ways. So we have to ensure that we, whatever data we are leaking is not being misused by third parties for their own benefits. And sometimes it becomes very difficult to actually realize like how your data can be misused. So I'll just take a simple example. So there was this project where people were pictures were getting captured for biometric authentication. Okay, well and good. But later it turned out that that same image of the hand could be used to understand how they're eating, whether they're well nourished, whether they eat less. And that becomes a challenge in a different way. So there's a very different kind of a privacy aspect that comes into the picture. So we have to work towards ensuring that the data that we are generating does not get misused in different ways. Okay, so that's all I have. Thank you. And I'll be happy to take any questions that any of you will have.
I thought, yeah, I think that's okay as well. You can send me an email if you're interested. Otherwise, like, yeah, definitely.
I request the participants, if you have any queries, unmute yourself. Or please post them in the chat box.
Sir, good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Sir, I am Shiva, a student of Mandala College. I have one small doubt.
Yes.
Sir, in these days, we have experiencing pain and stress a lot, sir, with their busy schedules and some other reasons.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any detection by finding this pain and stress by these wearable devices?
Actually, yes, there are quite a few solutions. Like stress, definitely. Like I have been working on them. So there are these wearable devices called heart rate monitors. Okay, you just wear it on your chest, and it can detect how your heart rate is varying across the day. And over the years, we have worked towards techniques to identify whether a person is stressed or not based on this heart rate sensor. So definitely, like stress is possible to measure using your heart rate sensors. It's also possible to do that. So actually, right now, what we are trying to do is move away from heart rate sensors, but rather towards smartwatches. Your smartwatches, again, with the PPG capability, can capture how your heart rate is at a particular time. So we are working towards understanding how reliable the stress detection is using a smartwatch. So yes, stress is definitely possible, and I have been working on that. In terms of pain, that is the other interesting thing which I don't work on, but I have a lot of colleagues who work on that. So basically, we have come up, like not here actually, where I was doing my postdoc, we had come up with this smart patch which you just stick to your back, okay, and it can capture, again, accelerometer is one of the sensors that was commonly being used in that. It basically captured how your posture is, and based on that it would identify like whether certain stress, whether your certain muscles are stressed, and if we can correct that. So yeah, definitely, like both these possibilities are possible to measure.
Thank you, sir. And sir, is there any radiation impact by using this device, sir?
So again, like the question has always been there, right? Like, is there any radiation impact of your phones? People claim there is. People claim there is not. Various agencies do it in different ways. So again, like it's a debatable question. Okay, and, there has always been this question with phones, with watches, with all these devices. Also, it comes to the same thing. So as long as think about the techniques that they are using. If that technique does not harm the body, so this device does not have any other way of harming the body. Right. I see one more question on the chat. I'll just read that. If everyone continues wearing this device, where we can see this wearable device in future. So that is where it becomes interesting, right? Like I love to see it from a healthcare point of view, and I believe that there is a lot of provisions in that because like if you have again, like right now smartwatches are expensive, okay, but gradually they will become cheaper over the years, and if we can afford them, that a lot of the population wears it, then like I was saying, right, you don't actually have to go and tell the doctor that this is what I'm experiencing. The doctor already knows your record, right, and they can see what all has happened. So that becomes like an easy thing in the healthcare monitoring. It's cost effective, right? Like if a doctor notices, or actually even without the doctor, at some point, like if your devices notice that there is something that is not correct, they can inform you that this is not going correct, you should go visit a doctor, or they can inform your healthcare practitioner that why don't you help out this person. So I believe that is one big direction in which these wearable devices are going into, okay, that health monitoring. The second thing that I believe, again, is basically in your activity understanding and providing real-time help at that moment. So basically, think about it. If you're driving a car, your device realizes that you're driving a car right now, so I should not send you any notification. So you don't really have to do the do not disturb kind of a thing, okay? Or even in that car thing, right? Say if you have a car where you are sharing it with your family members, right? When you go and open the car should be able to know that you have opened the car and maybe adjust mirrors and seats according to that. So there are millions of possibilities with all these devices. That's what I feel, at least. Any other questions?
Sir, which one is the suitable language for this type of developing wearable devices?
So actually that becomes interesting. Like initially it used to be Android for your like at least like when I was coding it almost 8 to 9 years ago, it was always Android that we were using. But more recently, there has been a lot of changes, at least for your mobile phones and smartwatches. Like Flutter is one of those languages that is commonly getting used for these app development, so that they suit both your Android devices as well as your iOS devices. In terms of these other wearable devices, the finer ones like the heart rate monitor and all, the ones that I have shown in the picture, right? That is some flavor of C. It's usually embedded C, sometimes it's Nest C. It all depends on what you're trying to get out of it. Or Arduino basically is a good platform to actually get started with a lot of these wearable devices. So I'll encourage, like, if any of you are interested in building projects on these, go and look at Arduino boards and start working on that. It's a lot of fun things to do.
Okay, sir. Okay. Sir, there is one question in chat box, it seems, sir.
Oh yes, I just saw that. What health conditions require a wearable device? See, again, like this is an interesting question. Okay, so does a health condition require a wearable device, or does a wearable device prevent a health condition? That is the thing that becomes debatable at some point. Okay, what I am interested in working is the latter. Basically, if you have a wearable device, you prevent health conditions. Okay, so as my work was suggesting, that I do a lot of eating detection work, right? So if you can detect this eating activity, then you prevent obesity kind of things, and that in turn leads to prevention of a lot of other diseases, right? Heart diseases and stuff. Certain types of cancers as well. So, like, my work is towards preventive medicine. Preventive medicine basically means prevent a disease even before it happens. What your question is on the other side, so that is something that I have more recently started working towards. So what health conditions require a wearable device is not really what I'm going to answer, but I'll keep it in line. Okay, so basically one of the things that we are looking right now is understanding behavior of cancer survivors. Okay, so like what type, so these are again a specific cancer that I'm looking at is called the colorectal cancer, that is getting affected by whatever you eat. Okay, so there are certain kinds of symptoms that generate. So what we are working towards now is using these wearable devices to detect what a person is eating, and if it is suitable for a certain CRC survivor or colorectal cancer survivor. So we are going to run the study soon to understand like how the patterns affect. So that becomes one of the health conditions. Okay, but again, like that becomes the other extreme. What interests me is the former, like where you don't actually have to go and get a treatment at all. Like if we can detect that you're eating fries every day at just before going to bed, that becomes a problematic behavior. That is what these devices will try to solve.
Sir, what is the impact of Cox model while using for prediction in this type of wearable devices?
What is the impact of Cox model, you're saying?
Yes, sir.
Actually, I have not done that. So that is, I never got into the theory side of this. So like, I don't have an answer to that, sir.
Okay. Sir.
Yeah. So actually, like this is an important problem. So I have been talking to my colleague out here at BITS, and this is where we are going to start working towards. So I do a lot of the systems development part of it, and he does a lot of the theory part of it. So we are working to see how we can work towards like working together to ensure that we have a lot of these details.
So what are the major classifications, sir, that we can find out in this type of?
It all depends on what you're training for. So again, like in that eating detection work, it was eating versus other activities. So we had non-eating as a major class, but we also kept smoking and drinking as two other classes. In case of stress detection, we usually go with stressed or not stressed. If you're going with a classifier, sometimes we go with a regression model as well, where we're trying to see if we can predict future stress based on certain patterns. But again, it all depends on what type of what you're trying to detect, basically. But and also what you're training on at the end.
Oh, thank you, sir. Still anyone left who want to get answer from sir? So kindly respond, don't be a spectator.
It's and if you don't want to ask right now, if you want to send an email to me at a later point of time, I'll be happy to respond back to that as well.
Sure, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yes.
So shall we wind up, sir?
Yes, sir. That's perfectly okay with me.
Okay. Aparna madam.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you so much. I actually had a wonderful Q&A session, discussing all these things with you all. So thank you very much for giving me the privilege of being here and to talk about my research. And at any point, if any of you want to ask me anything, please feel free to send an email to me. So Kamalakar sir already has my email address. You can get that if you want, or Kamalakar sir, if you want to collect questions and send it to me, I'm happy to send a response. So thank you from my side, Aparna.
Thank you. It's time for vote of thanks. Gratitude is the fairest blossom which springs from the soul. It's a great honor to propose vote of thanks to everyone who helped us to make the national webinar such a great success. Thanks to our chief guest, Professor Sogata Sen, for taking part in national webinar. Thank you for an exciting and thought-provoking address. Our sincere gratitude to our principal, Reverend Father Dr. G.A.P. Kishore S.J. I would like to thank our beloved HOD Kamalakar sir for his moral support. I thank Computer Science Department faculty from the bottom of my heart who had made this webinar a great success. Thanks a lot to all the participants. Last but not least, I thank Almighty for making this webinar a grand success. Thank you one and all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Saugat sir.
Yes, sir.
We continue relation with us, sir.
Yes, sir. Surely.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for your support, sir.
Thank you.